For everyone listening, welcome to the Literally Nothing Matters podcast.
Welcome back.
I'm excited. Krista is our next person to interview and get into her little brain.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about like who to put on the show, I was making my list, and in my head I was like, maybe we should have like a month of who we could add, and I was thinking maybe we could do like a series of women who inspire us, and you were the first person on my list.
Oh my God.
You really were. You were. So for those of you who don't know Krista, she is a friend that I stole from another close friend of mine.
I love those.
I know. They're the best. And yeah, a little bit about, do you want to like kind of explain a little bit about like who you are? I mean, I could go on forever about how cool you are of a person, but like I wanted to have you on the show first of all because I feel like you have a really cool, not a cool, but like a good background in history with like well, obviously with the brain aneurysm, but also I feel like when you went through that experience, you really like checked off a lot of bucket list items, and I feel like you almost like twisted the way that you live. And so I feel like you're super inspiring for that reason. But a little bit behind the scenes, like who are you? How would you introduce yourself if like you were on an interview and they said, bring your resume to life?
Oh my God. I feel like I need you to like write my dating profile because that just made me sound so freaking cool. And I was like, oh my God. And it's like what I'm gonna say, like live up to what Caitlin just said. Probably not. But my name is Krista. I am 31 years old. I was diagnosed with an unruptured aneurysm when I was 24. Since then, I have kind of lived a really interesting life up until this point. I have worked at a biotech company in corporate communications for the past like 7 years. I work at a yoga studio now. I'm like super social with my friends and my family. That's like really like the basis of who I am. So everything around that is just like little pieces of like sprinkles on top. But you made me sound super cool, but I'm not that cool, I promise. But
we'll get into all of the sprinkles
yes,
as we go.
As we do.
Yeah.
So a little funny tidbit about Krista, when we bought our house, Chad
Oh my
and I
God.
bought our house and we were gutting the whole thing. And so we were just in here, like, I don't know, ripping down walls or whatever. And all of a sudden we like hear something like hanging out in the front of our house, and we look, Krista, her parents just walk right in. They're like, hi, we saw the house. We just wanted to check it out.
That's
They
amazing.
are like those type of people that are like so friendly. They were here for a little bit. We're checking out the house together, like best friends forever.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Wait, so
Literally-
did you go to high school together? Like you grow
No.
up, so that's how you know?
No, so I went to high school with one of her best friends, who's also one of my best friends, Mel.
Got it.
And then we obviously connected through Mel, and like I said, I totally stole Krista
Yep.
because like I feel like we have a ton of good like qualities that are similar.
Yep.
And you're just easy to like be friends with. I don't know. You're just awesome.
Oh my God, thank you. That story is literally so funny to me because my parents they like lived in the North Shore area for a little bit. And they were also kind of like house hunting around the same time that you guys were. So they were like they had like seen the house before you guys had bought it. And so I was like, we were driving by one day and I was like, oh my God, my friend Caitlin and her husband bought this house. And they were like, what? And then my dad is like just a super like extrovert. And he was like, should we stop and say hello? I was like, they're like mid gutting the house, but like maybe we can.
Amazing.
It was so funny. So we like pulled over and like literally I think Chad was like knee deep in like something in the kitchen.
Probably.
And like
Yeah.
and you were just like, hi. And I was like, these are my parents.
We thought it was like the building inspector. We were like,
Yes.
shit, put the tools away.
Right? We didn't pull any permits. That's hilarious.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Okay, awesome. So I want to hear a little bit, I want to focus a little bit like on your journey about learning about kind of like the brain aneurysm and what that looked like for you. And give us a little bit, we know that you're obviously not like a doctor, so not looking for like medical experience, but I mean, you went through this, right? So like, how did you find it? Like what were your initial reactions to it, and kind of like what was the progression when you found out you were diagnosed with this?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting story. And like, yeah, to preface all of this, not a doctor, not giving medical advice, probably gonna say a million things wrong. But from my experience, it's been really, really interesting. So when I was 24, I had recently, like within the last year, moved out to the Boston area, and I was living with a partner at the time. And I was watching the Olympics. It was in the summer, it was August, and I loved the Summer Olympics so much. And I was eating pizza and salad, and I was like the happiest person on the planet. And I'm watching the Olympics, and all of a sudden I'm chewing, and I like all of a sudden can't chew. Like my brain just was like, nope, we're not chewing anymore. Half of my face feels like kind of frozen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't like move my face. It was like a super weird moment. And my thank God I was like living with someone at the time because he was looking right at me and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I couldn't
That's so
answer him.
scary.
And it was like super weird. Yeah. It was super scary. It wasn't painful. It was like just this moment of like frozenness. And the way I describe like I did feel a sensation in my head. And the way I describe it is like if you've ever held like dry spaghetti and then you try to break it in half and you feel like that like break of like all the little
Mm.
pieces. That's kind of like how it felt like momentarily like in my brain. And I was like, that was weird.
Yeah,
But I'm
that's
like
concerning.
feeling
Wow.
I was like a little weird, but I'm feeling all these things and I like can't vocalize any of them. So it was just this moment of like, what the hell is happening in my brain? Um, so when I finally like started to get some motion back in my face, my partner was like, we need to go to the ER. And I was like, no, like I'm fine. Like that was weird, but it was like, you know, whole 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever. And he was like, no, this is like super weird. And so, um, like immediately after that, probably like 15 minutes later, I started to get a headache. So I took some ibuprofen. It started to go away, whatever. And I was like, this feels silly to go to the ER now, but I guess it like makes sense.
Mm.
So we went to the ER. So I have like leftover dry throat.
Don't worry.
We went to the ER and it was like a classic like ER situation where you're like sitting there for like 17 hours and you're like you came in and you're like I have like a scary headache and they're like I don't know what that means. Here, wait for like 5 hours. So we waited
That
literally I
feels
think
crazy because it feels
uh-huh.
like stroke symptoms. Like, why would
Yeah.
they not take you right away?
Exactly. And that's like what I was kind of envisioning. There are things called like I think they're TIAs. They're like mini strokes. So they are very like a very limited episode of a stroke, but can still have like after effects and whatever. So I was like, maybe that's what I had. But we're like waiting at the ER. It takes forever. We were literally we stood up out of they finally put us in a room. We stood up out of the room to walk out and leave. And there was a doctor like running down the hallway. She was like, get back in. Like, I'm here right now. We're doing the thing. And I was like, oh my God. And like looking back on that moment, if like it had been like 30 seconds later, like we would have been gone. Like I would have had no idea that this existed. Like I would have just probably carried on with my life. So it was like a super crazy like beginning to this whole thing. Um, and so by that point, it was like 7 in the morning, and we're in the ER, and they were like, "All right, we're gonna admit you because we don't really know what's happening. Like this sounds like a stroke. Like so sorry we didn't get to you sooner, but you're here now. We're gonna admit you."
That's
Surprise.
like the
I was
US
like,
Right.
medical story, right?
Literally.
Ugh,
literally, literally.
cringy.
So I was like, "Okay, sounds good." So they admit me, and then they gave me a CT scan and it was probably like 9 in the morning and I'm like so delirious and I'm like laying in this hospital bed and the I didn't even have a doctor yet. I just had like the PA, which I know is like similar, whatever. But the PA came in and she was super cool and she was like, all right, I have news. And I was like, all right, like what's up, girl? And she was like, so like no signs of a stroke, but there is a 3 millimeter aneurysm in your left ICA. And I was like, looking at her and I'm like
You're like, in
24.
English, please.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at her and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I have heard of an aneurysm, like, kind of, but like on Grey's Anatomy, like, I truly don't even know what it is. Like, it's one of those things that I feel like I should have known what it was, but I just like didn't, right? I like had no clue. So she's like kind of telling me, and I'm like, okay, awesome. I'm like, what do I do next? Like, my parents like across the state, like, I'm like alone. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And she's like, well, we'll get you a visit with a neurologist and then like we'll release you. And I was like, okay. So she leaves and then I'm Googling and I'm like, what is an aneurysm? And it's like you start WebMDing yourself to death, right? I'm like, oh my God, like this is crazy. I'm like, I have this? Like, no way. And I was like, are you kidding me? It was just a moment of like, what the hell? Like, what even is this? Like, I don't
Did
even
you
know what's
think like I am on death's door?
Definitely. Like I had
Okay.
no idea.
Especially WebMD.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You read like everything and you're like, oh my God. And so I read everything, WebMD'd myself to death, as one does. Was just so like I had no experience with it, like no family history of it, like no one I
It's
knew
crazy.
had ever had this. Like I really had never even heard of this. So it was just so foreign to me. And so they finally got me a consult with a neurologist and it took like 2 days. So I couldn't leave the hospital and they put me on the heart floor because they didn't know what was wrong with me. So I had like a million things strapped up to me that I like didn't
Mhm.
need. And so it was just like super funny. I was just like strapped up with everything at all times. And so finally the neurologist comes in and he was probably like 140 years old, like had to like travel in to like get to us. Like it was a
oh
whole
gosh.
thing. And I was just like, I remember my parents like came for that day and my partner at the time was there. We're like sitting in the hospital room. The only information we knew was like what they had told me and what like we had all like individually Googled. And this neurologist like literally was like, all right, yeah, so you're gonna need surgery. You're probably gonna need it like soon. Like you're really lucky they caught this. Da da da. And I was like, okay, like can I like go back to my life? Like I was working full time, like working out, like meeting friends, like whatever. And he was like, yeah, probably, but like you're probably gonna have to do all these things first. And I was like, can I? And I asked him, I was like, can I like walk? And he like looks at me and he goes, I mean, for now. And,
What?
What?
and I literally was so just like, oh my God. And I think that was like my first real experience with like how diverse the like medical world is and like bedside treatment and
Yeah.
knowledge of issues and how like little knowledge there was out there about like brain aneurysms and how
Mhm.
crazy like this journey was probably going to be. So when I finally left the hospital that day, I was so like my whole family was like, what are we gonna do? Like, what are we gonna do with you? Like, this is so scary. This is crazy. Um, so that was probably like the worst bout of information I ever received. So that was like the very first time I received my diagnosis. That was nuts.
Okay.
Then, sorry, do you want to ask questions?
No, I just feel like it's crazy to me that like I wish that you had had an awesome like woman doctor that would have sat you
Mhm.
down and like
Mhm.
explained, okay, this is what it is, this is what it means, here is your game plan and like what you can expect. That just seems so crazy like in a time like that to be so nonchalant about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like a lot of what it is. It's like when they don't have a lot of information on it and you'll
Right.
see ever like dig into brain aneurysms or whatever. Like they're really the information and the research on it is pretty limited. So
Mhm.
it's now looking back, it's not surprising that the people in this hospital didn't really understand or know what was going on. They weren't specialists, they didn't have like a department isolated just for that. So looking back, I can kind of understand it, but it also makes me mad because I'm like,
Yeah.
that's such a
Especially in
crazy,
Boston.
Right.
yeah,
Like we're supposed to be the best hospitals, you know?
yeah.
Wait, before you continue on in the story, can you explain a little bit about what you have now learned, like what a brain aneurysm is for anyone that doesn't know? Because I feel like
Yeah.
I barely know what it is.
Yes. No, 100%.
Things
It is
I
like,
should have looked up before this interview if I
no,
was a professional.
I did, and I still don't get it. So
no, it's like totally it's one of those things that's like the first question you get, and I love when people ask that because I'm like, hell yeah, that was literally me when I was like 24. I'm like, I had no idea, like no
Yeah.
idea. Um, so the way I describe it, so the definition of a brain aneurysm is like a weakening in your artery somewhere in your brain, and then the weakening kind of grows, and then blood like pools in this little balloon that pops out,
Oh,
and then over time that can either sustain or stay the same, or it can rupture. And then when it ruptures, that's when you have strokes, and it can be
right.
really serious. But the way I like to describe it, that's kind of like you can actually use this. Say you have like a garden hose, and that's like your artery, and you're using that to like fuel your big veggie garden, and you're using the same garden hose over time, and it's like so fine, and you're like pumping water through it, and it's like great. And then one day, like one summer, it's like really hot and you're pumping water through it, and like you notice like a little bulge in the gardening hose, and you're like, oh, it's fine, like it's just been, it's still pumping through it, we just have like a little
Mhm.
bulge, but it's like nothing serious. And then like maybe a couple years down the road after wear and tear, that bulge just can't hold anymore and it just bursts and then you need a new hose. So it's like the idea that there's just this weakening somewhere in an artery, and it's only in arteries, that becomes this point of like just very fragile tissue that can burst at any point.
Mm.
So for a lot of people, aneurysms can be like, mine was found incidentally. So I was scanned for something else and then they found the aneurysm. That's very common. And that's honestly like great when that happens, because usually you don't have any symptoms and it's something you're now aware of and you can take care of. Um, but for a lot of people, they don't really know until they have a rupture, right? And so that's like when it's really scary. And that's what we're trying to do a lot of research now to prevent any people getting in that position, because sometimes you can go, probably could have gone my whole life not knowing that I had an aneurysm until something like tragic happened. And then, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen after a rupture that aren't so great. So if you can be preventative in any nature to take care of it, like that's a plus plus. So there's a lot of things about it that are interesting that I've learned, but for the most part, it's just that weakening somewhere in an artery. It can burst, it could not burst, it can change shape. There are different kinds. There's just a lot of information I could tell you about, but I won't bore you.
So
And I remember
crazy.
when, and I'm sure you'll get to this part, I feel like that's a scary situation too, because it's not like you get this diagnosis and they're like, listen, if you continue with your life, you will like pass away from this, or you will live. Like you don't know what's going to happen. It could either rupture or it might not rupture, and then you might
And you're
have to go
totally
into it.
fine.
Like it's like one of those things, because I remember vaguely hearing when you were going through this of like what the action step would be, because it's not crystal clear as to like what the prognosis really means, you know, like it could be deadly or it could just be like chilling out, you know. So I feel like that definitely like talk about that too, like when you heard about this, you know, what was your action plan?
Yeah, totally. So like very at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, like I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I
Yeah.
remember telling my job, and like I still have the same boss now and she's awesome and we have a great relationship. But I remember telling her and she was just like, oh my God, like everyone just thought I was gonna die. Like that was
Yeah.
it, right? Everyone was like, you're dead. You're dead meat. Like stop working. Like
Yeah,
just
like
chill.
great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like so wild. And I remember just being this like completely like dissociated like space of like, I don't even know what life is. Like, this is so crazy. So even though that neurologist was like so just delusional and crazy, he got me a really great referral into Beth Israel. And Beth Israel has a really great program for brain aneurysm specifically.
Okay.
They are the founders of the Brain Aneurysm Foundation. So they have like all the right people. They have like all the great surgeons, like just so much information, so much research happening. So it's awesome. So when I got into that program, I went to go visit. In my first visit, it was like same thing. Parents were there, partner was there. It was like everyone was there. We're all like holding hands. We're like kumbaya. We're gonna get through this. And I literally remember it was like a fellow and a surgeon and like maybe like two other people in the room, and everyone was like so chill about it. They were like,
Really?
"Yeah, you're young. You're young. It's 3 millimeter. It's super small. Like you can wait and watch. Like the risk is like pretty low. The risk is always like low, but it's always there,
It's still
right?
a
Right.
risk.
There's always a
Yeah.
risk,
Always
and
there.
like the
Yeah.
risk is pretty friggin' big.
And
Right.
I feel like scary because the reason you found out is because you had that weird experience.
Yeah.
So like who's to say something like that wouldn't happen
Right.
again? Like I feel like that would freak me out after going through that
Right.
small like,
And
piece of it.
yeah, exactly. So they were like, you're really young, it's really small, like let's wait and watch, like let's see what happens. Because a lot of what they'll recommend is you get like an MRI or an MRA every year, and then they'll just try to see if it's changed size or gotten bigger or changed in shape, and maybe that will change a couple of things. But for me, they were like, it's small, you're young, like let's wait and watch. And I was like, woo! And like we all left that appointment, we got drinks, we were like, hell yeah, we're living again, baby. So it was like this roller coaster of just like, okay, we're gonna be fine, we're cool. Um, so I was kind of in that space for a year of like, I'm fine, like this is great. I went back the next year. You're supposed to get a follow up like every year after you get your MRI, so I can go over the scans with you and talk about any changes and like blah blah blah. And when I went back the next year, I think I was 25 at this point, And I think I was just there with my partner, and my partner was like just chilling. And we were both just like, yeah, it's gonna be like a day, whatever. It's gonna be very chill. Oh no, my parents were there too. We're all there again, and at this point it was just a fellow, and the fellow comes in and he like sits down, and he's very like, there's so much energy happening, and he literally was like, he was like, all right, so when are we having surgery?
Oh.
And I were like, just like my heart like dropping, like I got like so pale, I got like super like stressy hives. Like I think I like immediately started crying because I was like, what? Like this is so drastically different from what my experience was the year before. Like there was no inclination that I would have had to have surgery this year. So it's just like a wild roller coaster, whatever. So I left that appointment feeling like really defeated. And I was like, surgery, like I'm 25. Like, am I gonna have brain surgery right now? Like that is so bizarre. That is so crazy. And exactly like you said, Caitlin, like there's so many like what ifs. There was no like crystal clear path. Like there was not one person saying like you should have surgery for this. Not one person saying like don't have surgery. There was just like a lot of people, a lot of like expertise in my life at that point that were like, do this, don't do this. Like I couldn't relate to like any of my friends. I couldn't relate to like any of my family. There was like literally not a person that I knew on the planet at that point that like had gone through this or was going through this. And it felt so crazy. And I remember feeling just so like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Like, don't even know what I'm supposed to do. And I think that like decision paralysis really just like killed me for like a long time. And I was definitely like from that second appointment, that second year, I was like, I don't think that this is something I can like even entertain right now in my life. Like maybe I should be, but I like don't have anyone that's helping me to make that decision, and that decision has to be me, and I don't feel qualified to make that decision for myself.
You're so young, and we're like just in general. I feel like
Right.
that like time of my life, like 25, I was like a shit show. Like I don't
Shit
know, like I
show.
was trying to like figure out like who I was, and I feel like you're going through this
Yeah.
experience that like is life or death type of situation, and it's like that seems so unfair.
Right. I feel like
Yeah.
that's also must have been hard in terms of like relating to your friends and stuff who are just like, I mean, I'm sure they were, good friends and supportive, but at that time it's like, okay, what like bar are we going to this weekend? And like, what boys are doing X, Y, and Z? And you're over
Mhm.
there like,
Yeah.
I gotta like make a life-changing decision, so
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was like exactly that feeling. And like I have the best friends and like the best family and like truly like the best support system like on the planet. Like I'm literally so lucky, and I'm sure all of them tried their mightiest to like relate to me, but it's just one of those things like you literally can't. Like you literally can't relate to anyone on that level. So I remember like for that whole year, kind of after that, just being in this like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like I don't have a clear cut path anywhere, and I can't make any decisions right now. And so I was in this like decision paralysis, and I just put it off. And I was like, I can't do this right now. I don't really feel comfortable in like my living situation. Like, what if that changes? And like, whatever. There are so many unknowns. I was like, I can't do this right now. So, I waited and watched for like 5 years. Like, I really put it off. Like, I really stepped back, and I was like, I can't do this. And I know if I like pressure myself to do something, I'm not gonna do it, right? I'm gonna like retaliate. It's gonna be like the opposite. So I was like, I know I need to like make this decision on my own time. And so I put it off for a while. And within that time, a lot of things happened that kind of helped me make my decision a lot easier. I got out of a relationship that wasn't serving me. I kind of moved in on my own and explored life very differently than like I ever had. And like without all those experiences, I wouldn't have been able to make the decision that I finally did. Um, Even through the Brain Aneurysm Foundation in that time, I made a really good friend, and her name is Erica. And I literally found her on Instagram, and she has gone through, she's like, I don't know, she might be like a year or two older than me, but she had the same surgery, basically same diagnosis, same kind of thing. But she had it a couple years before I finally decided to make surgery. So even though I waited 5 years, I was able to put myself in a better place where I was like, okay, I can make this decision. I can sustain myself. Like I'm super independent now. Like I can kind of do my own thing. Like I feel really strongly in like my decision making capabilities. I have a friend who's gone through it. I've learned from her experience. I'm ready to rumble. Um, so finally when I was 30, I don't even really know what it was, but I think it was like my 30th birthday. I was just like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, get your life together. Like, you're at this point where like you are pretty happy with yourself. You're pretty happy with like where you are in life. Like, why are you you've been waffling on this subject for such a long time? Um, and there are a lot of things that could go wrong if you don't do it. There are a lot of things that could go wrong if you do it. But if you don't do it and something happens, are you just going to be so mad at yourself for like the rest of your life because you could have prevented this?
Mhm.
So I finally just got to this point of like, just suck it up. Like this sucks so hard for you and like everyone else in your life. But if you're just gonna sit there and like not do anything about it when like you could have done something about it, like you
Mhm.
just gotta do it.
So was
So
this surgery like a significant surgery? I mean,
mm,
it's brain
Brain surgery.
surgery. I just, yeah, you don't know with technology these
No.
days. I'm always like, is it an
Right.
inpatient thing? Is it an out? Like, I would imagine
Quick
this is pretty
afternoon.
intensive.
yeah, so it's definitely different. There are different surgeries for
Okay.
different situations. So I was really lucky in that I qualified for a surgery that was pretty brand new. When they first said way back in the day, you know, when I was like 25, they were like, all right, when are we doing surgery? There was like a brand new, right off the market, like medical device that they were using. And that freaked me out because I was like, this thing is brand new. There's like no research on it. Like, what's going to happen when I'm like 50? If they're going to have to like replace it, like, no one knows. So I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But cut to when I was 30 and finally, like, okay, I'm doing this. And I really hadn't told like anyone in my life that I was like doing this. I was just kind of like silently seeking out like second and third opinions from like different surgeons and doctors and like going to like a million appointments by myself. Um, when I went back to the very first surgeon that I went to at Beth Israel. And I was like, hello. And it was like just him and me. And he was like, yep, nope, I remember you. I remember your family. I remember like the whole thing. I remember like what happened. And he's like, you're ready. And I'm like, I'm ready. And he was like, all right, like do this. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I remember it. So it was like, I think it was June, like the end of June. And I was just like, yep, I'm ready. And he's like, okay. And he's like, when do you want to do this? And I was like, when can you do this? He's like, as soon as possible. I'm like, okay. And he's like, okay. And he like,
He's like, see you next
Yeah,
Monday.
see you tomorrow.
it like literally was like that. He like called in his like NP and he was like, hey, when can we get like Krista in for blah blah blah? And she was like, oh, like 2 weeks. And he was like, okay, great. And he looks at me, he's like, 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, great. Not even
Sure.
yeah. So the lucky thing for me was that within those like 5 years that I waited, I still qualified for that same surgery and that same medical device they wanted to use for me the first time. But something very interesting was happening where in like the first 2 years, I think they were using the device. There's a coating. So the device is essentially like a little stent. It's like a little tube and it's like a mesh tube. And they snake it all the way up from your groin, from your femoral artery. And they snake
What?
it up and they leave it kind of in the space where the bulge is. So it kind of covers the opening of the bulge. So you have like, here's like the artery, here's like the bulge. They snake it up and they leave it right here. So eventually your body just forms over the mesh tube and like this little bulge kind of sinks back into your artery.
That is
So
That's
fucking wild.
magic.
it's
Like,
crazy.
I just don't understand how they get it all the way from your groin all the way up into your brain. Like, science is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Exactly. So to like answer your question about is it like a major surgery in terms of brain surgery and brain aneurysm surgery, it's on like the smaller, lower side of like craziness. So sometimes if you like, for example, if you have a rupture, sometimes what happens is like they'll have to like go into your brain. So like shave your head, get into like your skull, like directly go in. But I hadn't had that. Mine was in a really good place. They could easily snake up and get to it. So I was really lucky.
Wow.
Yeah, so within those like past 5 years, the coating that they had put on this mesh tubing, that was supposed to act as like a biosimilar to your artery, so it would just kind of mesh easily, was reacting to the artery. And it was causing people to have strokes. It was causing people to have seizures. And so within those
Yeah.
5 years, they had changed the coding so that this wasn't happening. So if I had done that surgery the 5 years before, I would have been facing all of those like problems that all those people had. But because I had decided to wait and watch, I was now like a candidate for a medical device that was working for people and wasn't causing issues.
Wow.
Um,
Crazy.
so it was kind of like a
Crazy the
weird.
way the universe works. It's like just
Literally.
listen to your gut, listen to your intuition,
Mhm,
and like if you can. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's so powerful. And I feel like we don't do that enough, especially in the medical realm where it's like the doctor comes in and you're like, okay, yeah, like I'm taking in all your information and like you are the expert. You are the
Right. Like you
expert.
are God.
But like they
They're
are a
not.
person, they went to school, they're
mhm.
basing their evidence off of prior cases, and it's like it's so instinctual, a lot of these things. And I feel like whether it's like biological or spiritual or something, it's like there's a gut feeling. And I feel like it's so important to listen to that, because like this is such a good story about like
Yeah.
you just for some reason weren't ready. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. It would have been wrong, and like clearly that's amazing.
Yeah. I feel like especially being as young as you were too,
Mhm.
it's crazy. Like I feel like if I had been that young, even still today, I don't know if I would have been able to like stick to my guns as much as you did. So I feel like that's really amazing. And also the fact that you were able to act so independently when you were like, okay, I'm ready. I need to take action. Like, let's go and do it.
Hmm.
And doing that all on your own is huge.
Mhm. Yeah, it was definitely like one of those things where I was like, if I had like stopped for a minute and like
Yeah.
paused and been like, what actually are you like signing yourself up for? Like, I maybe like I would have stopped, but I was on this like
Right.
crazy, like, I
Like
felt like
fight or flight mode.
yes, and I was like, I have to do this. Like, if I had like any inkling of like doing something, like I have to do it. And like my friend Erica, like I got dinner with her at one point and I was like, tell me everything. Tell me like what happened, like what I can expect. So she like broke it down for me. She like answered every single question I had. She's always answered every single question I had. She's like literally the best human on the planet. So I don't think if all those stars had aligned and if I hadn't known someone who was like my age who had done that, who had been through it, like I don't know if I would have been able to make that decision. But
Hmm.
it was just one of those things where I was like, all right, I'm doing it and we're doing it. We're all doing it. Everyone, high
Yeah.
five. It's happening. And it's
Yep.
2 weeks from today. Get ready. Woo.
Oh
So
my god.
it was wild. Yeah.
So I want to definitely hear, I want to go back to the point where, like the 5 years when you're figuring out, like you have this situation, I'm going to wait on it. And you kind of alluded to the fact of like big things happened in your life. And I feel like that's when I got to know you. And I
Mhm.
was so like in awe of you because I knew you were going through this experience, but like I didn't know you well enough to be like, what's going on? So I just kind of got like the outside look from it. But I feel like you broke up a relationship that was pretty serious, right? Like I had met your partner at the time, like it was, you guys were like in it.
Mhm.
So like you had to get real honest with yourself of like, what am I going to do? I remember, I think you like ran a half marathon or you did some like a bike event, like, or no, you did a triathlon, didn't you? Like
Yeah.
you did all these things. And so like, first of all, what did you do? Why did you choose to do all of these things? Like, were you kind of like, these are my bucket list items, I need to do them? And like, would you recommend other people to kind of like do that experience regardless if they're going through this big circumstance that hopefully no one has to ever experience, but like what did that look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, it was like when I look back on that time now, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe I like did all of that in
You
that
did so much.
time. It was so much. I think
We're doing it all.
we're doing
Yeah.
it
I
all.
love
We're
it
doing it
though.
all. Why not? I think yeah, I mean, I'd been diagnosed with this brain thing and like no one I knew could relate to it. And I remember I just like found like as so many survivors and people that kind of go through this, I've learned as I've gotten to know many more people who have this situation, you develop this like crazy, deep, dark sense of humor where you're like, I could die today. And you're just kind of like, that's it. And like you say that around people and they're like, oh my God. And you're like, no, no, no. Like, but it's fine. Like, It's fine. Like, it's
Like,
trust me, it's
it's
fine.
all good.
It's all good. So you develop this kind of like weird, deep, dark sense of humor, and then at the same time, you're just like constantly like existentially crisising of like,
Mhm.
is what I'm doing like what I want to do? Like, what really,
Mm.
like, what are things that I like really want to do with my life? Like, is this actually like serving me in the way that I want it to? Like, probably not. Let's chop it off, move on. So I think when I was diagnosed with that and I was kind of going through that, and I really was like, oh my God, no one can relate to me. I was definitely in a relationship that I was like, I don't think this is like my forever, but that's kind of what it's like teeing up to be. And I don't think I want that. So I had to make a decision on that. And thankfully, I had like a huge support system to kind of hold me after that because I was living with them. And after that, right, you have to like get all your stuff out. There was like the cutest dog on the planet involved. And I was like, my heart is literally breaking
The
every single
worst.
day. It was so hard.
So hard.
And it's not like he was a terrible person, right? It's not
Right.
like he was awful or like we had a terrible relationship. It was just like, this isn't my
Sometimes that's
person.
harder though,
Yeah.
to
Oh
And
my
like
you're
make
going
that
through
call.
this.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
you're like kind of leaning on
Yeah.
this person, and he was with you when you were going through this thing. So it's like so easy.
Right. It
We
could have
talked
been
about this a ton
easier.
of like
Yeah.
just the
Mhm.
easy road, like just living and like keeping going, you know? So
Yeah.
like that's so like inspiring that you
Right.
realize, like it's black or white. Like this is either working for me or not.
Yeah.
Can't live in the gray area anymore.
Right. Like so in your intuition.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, I think I was living in a gray area with a lot of other things, like my diagnosis that I decided to like kind of push off treatment for. And I was kind of like every other day, like either yes or either no. And so there were a lot of things where I was like, finally just like, this is not working for me. So that ended. That was like that was like almost a 5 year long relationship. That ended, and like looking back, we were still so young, and like you're 25 and like whatever, and like you have so much life ahead of you, but it felt so like this is the end of the world, like this is gonna be awful.
Yeah. It's a long time to be with someone too.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like that support thing too, right? Like this person has been with me for through all these things. Like I've been with them through a bunch of other things. So like, I don't it was so hard to make that decision of like, is this a person that I should be with? Like, do I want to be with them? Like, I don't think they deserve to be in a relationship with someone who's like half on them. Like that doesn't feel
Mhm.
good either. Um, so once I kind of like dug myself out of that hole, I decided that all right, I need to like move to the city, be a city girl, like live on my own, live, laugh, love in the city. So I like did that. That was so much fun. And I'm like still in the apartment that I moved into, and I found like the best apartment on the planet. Like it was amazing. All the stars aligned for that one. And I just kind of decided like there were a lot of things that could keep me moving. And it definitely was sort of like a every other day thing. Like every other day I was like, woo, yeah, let's go. And every other day I was like, oh my God, like what is happening with my life? But for the most part, I decided that like these are like there are things you want to do in your life. And like if you're not gonna just sign up for them or do them, like you're probably never gonna do them. So I was like, I want to do like a baby triathlon. Like that sounds fun. Like had I ever done a triathlon in my life? No. Like why not? And so it wasn't like a big triathlon. It was like a little sprint triathlon. But it was still like the combo of like the swimming, the biking, the running, and like I hate biking. Like
And you
biking
had
is
to like
awful.
go out and like buy a bike. Like there's like all these
Yes.
little things that you're like, sure, I'll just do it, but like no, they're like actually takes a good amount of effort to
Yeah,
do
and the
all of these things.
training and all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, like I was unwell, so I was like, yeah, sure, like let's sign me up for a little baby triathlon. Let's do it. And it was like the best experience of my life. Like, did I have an amazing time? Hell no. Did I hate the biking part? Like, absolutely. Like literally every moment of it. But it was so cool because it was a women's only triathlon. So
Oh, I love that.
it's just like only women. Everyone was like hyping each other up. It was just like the best environment ever. I remember like riding my bike, and I think about this moment often when I'm feeling like, oh, like what is life? Like unmotivated to do anything. I remember like riding my bike, and it was like a pretty like flat part, but I was still like dying. And I got passed by this woman. And when you're in a triathlon, I don't know if this is like this in every race, but they will write your age on your leg. So like everyone had their age like on their little like calf. And this woman passes me on her bike, and her bike had like a little basket on it, and the age on her leg said 71. And I was like,
Yes.
You're like shit.
yeah,
You're
I was
like,
like,
okay, we can keep going.
Literally, I was like, if she can do this with like a bike that's meant to like go to the farmer's market every Sunday, like I
Right.
finish this at least. Like Krista, get it together. So that was like a super funny. But like once I finished that, that was like the best feeling on the planet. I was like, woo, I could do this. But then it's also like you have all these moments where you're like, is this something a person with like an unruptured brain aneurysm like should be doing? Like
Oh yeah.
maybe not. So like you cycle through a lot of those things. And then like that year I also signed up for a triathlon and like made all my or not a triathlon, a half marathon and like made all my friends do it. And that was like the most traumatizing experience for all of us because in like November and we all died and it was awful. But still it was like a little boop, check off the things.
Yeah.
Yes.
So within like the 25 to 30, like those years, I tried to just like force myself to do like a million things, like go on like all the dates, like do a triathlon if you've never done it before, like do a half marathon and basically die with all your friends, like go on this trip and like do these things and like whatever. And I kind of felt like by the time I got to 30, like I felt a little bit more established in like where I was with life. I tried a couple of different things. I knew more about like what I liked as a person, what I needed for like support, all of those different things. And it felt like by the time I hit 30, I was just more capable of making that decision for myself. And I'm so happy that I waited for that.
Yeah. I feel like it's crazy how much this part of the story relates back to the episode that we recorded for last week, which was all about spending time like doing things just for you and like trying new things and like how it's the best way to like build up your self-confidence. And like that is literally it, what you're saying.
Right.
It's crazy.
Do you
Yeah.
still do these types of things, or do you feel like that was like a phase and now you're like on to the next part of your life? Or does this like make you a crazy, crazy person for life?
Um, I think it was definitely a moment where I was like, I mean, like post surgery, like looking back, I'm like, I had like brain surgery. Like I literally can do anything on the planet.
Yeah.
Like there's really nothing that like is gonna hold me back or stop me besides like myself. So
Yes.
I think having that mindset of just like what like literally like what can't you do or what can't you go through is like helpful for me because I could just look back and be
Yeah.
like, you were so like there was a moment in time where you were not capable of doing these things and like now you are and like be so grateful for that. So I think it's
Mhm.
just like this crazy like even I was sick for the past 2 days and I like woke up today and I like could breathe and I was like, yeah, like I was like,
Yes.
woo, what is everyone doing today? Like, hello, like what did I miss? I'm back. I'm so happy. This is so great. Like some people don't get to wake up in the morning, right? And like that's just such a interesting take on it because I also think there are pieces of this that kind of manifest my thoughts into like aging, where I have like a lot of friends who are super like, ooh, I don't want to get older. Like getting older sucks. Like da da da. And I'm just like, some people don't get that opportunity. Like some
Yeah.
people don't get to get old. So like be grateful for that. So I think that shapes like a lot of my thoughts about like what I'm gonna do or what I'm gonna throw myself into. And I think I definitely have that personality more so now where I'm like, there's not a lot that's gonna scare me. And if I haven't done it before, how do I know if I'm not gonna love it? Like how do I know if that's not gonna be like my favorite thing on the planet if I never try it or I never like throw myself into doing it? So I think it's just if anything, it's like just more of a motivational little piece in my brain I can just kind of pick out when I like need it and give myself a little pep talk and like put it back. But I think it has just helped me to be unafraid when I can. So
Ugh,
it's only gotten better from here.
I love that.
I love it too.
It's such a good perspective. I feel like it really relates to the theme of our podcast. Like, literally nothing matters. I could have freaking died. I could die tomorrow. Like,
Right.
you know, anything could happen, and I've made it this far. Like,
Mhm.
literally nothing matters. What am I stressing about?
Right.
Mhm.
Like find what makes you happy and just follow that. And like
Mhm.
hopefully no one has to go through a big experience like you did to figure this out, you know? But I feel
Mhm.
like you just lived such a different life from this experience. And like, how lucky are you and all of us to be able to kind of like, you really can do whatever you want. You know, like no
Yeah.
one is saying you can't, it's only ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it's just so cool and inspiring to like see you and follow you. And it's just such a good outlook on life.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah, thank
Um, in terms of like bringing it back to like the medical side,
Mhm.
so like how you were saying like people couldn't relate and that was really hard for you. If, you know, anyone listening has a family member or a friend or, you know, whoever going through something similar to this, you know, a medical scare or a big thing, what would have helped you? Like, what was the support that you needed
Mm.
from people?
Yeah, I think I wasn't looking for my friends or my family to like solve my issue. I think I just knew it was going to be a me thing. I am like a person who will research something to death, and I'll like know that this side and this side and this side and this side. I'll know all the sides, I'll know all the information, I'll know all the facts. So I know at the end of the day, it's going to be me having to make that decision. So I wasn't looking for anyone to be like, well, I read this research and this was going to save this person. Like, no, none of that. I just wanted someone to be like, this fucking sucks. Like, this
Yeah.
sucks so hard. And I'm here for you and I love you. And like, that's it. And like, I'll hold your hand through whatever. That's like the piece that I needed. I think what helped me the most was finding someone who I could relate to, who was my age, who was kind of like in my area, like same kind of demographics, like same kind of story, who had gone through the same thing that I had gone through. And that was something that I could like connect to and hang out with and like chat with. And like still to this day, like we'll get lunch together or like dinner and like I'll see her like randomly and like we'll chat. And like it's so funny because like we talk so nonchalantly about it now. We'll talk about everything under the sun, but like our brains. And then like the last 5 minutes, I'll be like, how's your head? She's like, oh, you know, I had like 6 migraines, like whatever. And like we just go through it really quickly, but it's super funny. But I think finding someone that you can relate to that's gone through it or as close to as through it as you can possible, like do that. I think that was like the best thing I could have ever done. And like still to this day, I have like if the Brain Anderson Foundation like Instagram like reposts something I post, I'll end up with like a handful of people in my DMs like, hi, I'm going through this. Can I ask you questions? Like da da da. Like
Aw.
I know someone getting surgery on like Monday and I've been like chatting her up and like whatever. And so I have a handful of people that like I've kept in touch with that I could be that person for and kind of like pay that forward. So find someone, yeah, find someone that you can relate to. Know that like your family and friends aren't going to be able to solve everything for you. It's probably going to be a you decision. And just like eventually have faith in the people that have gone to school and studied something and that, like that's their day job and they love it, they eat it, they breathe it. Like they're very like positive that they're going to be able to make a difference for you. So just like believe them and like believe yourself, and I think you'll end up okay. But
I love that. I'm getting that tattooed on my
Preach,
ass.
seriously. Believe yourself.
Believe in yourself. I need another butt cheek.
I'll put yourself on mine. We
Oh
can
my
just stand
god.
next to each other.
Can people reach out to you if they have like questions about this? What's your handle? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
yeah, oh my god, like literally do not hesitate to reach out to me. It's like you're facing this, your family member's facing this, you just want to chat about it, you have questions, you're curious. Like I'm an open book about all this. I'm like, I will talk your ear off until the cows come home. It's fine. I think my Instagram is just at Crista_King, and it's Crista, Crista. But dive on into those DMs. I think I have a public profile, so like fear not, I will find you.
You're also just fun to talk to. You're gonna get these weird messages
Yeah,
from like
right?
creepy men.
Hey,
I'm
wanna
like,
chat?
everyone DM Krista.
I'll be like, all right, line up. Are you guys on Hinge? Like, what's
Yeah.
You're like, are you single? ASL.
Is this like a
Oh my God,
sugar
do you
daddy
remember that?
situation?
Age, sex, location.
Oh
Did
my
you
god,
ever do that?
ASL. Yes. Do you remember? Never mind. That's just a downward
This is
spiral.
what
We
we
don't need
do.
to go there.
You're thinking of chat rooms.
Yeah, chat roulette. Do you remember that? LOL.
Krista, did you do chat roulette?
Oh yeah. Oh, I did it all.
Like I feel like sleepovers with the gals, just like
honey.
hilarious times.
No,
So
literally.
creepy.
Is that like still a thing? I'm like, it's
I
spread
hope not.
plans, betting. Like, I
There's
don't know.
probably worse things out there now, truly.
That's true. That is so true.
So
Oh
true.
my god. Well, that was fabulous. I don't think
That was
I have
so
anything.
great.
This was so like I feel like I learned so much. I'm so inspired to
I
be cool and
know.
awesome and daring. In
Yes.
my 30s.
I know. I feel like I want to like book a trip or like
Right?
do something bucket list.
You absolutely should. And it was like I like forgot the name of your podcast was. What is it again?
Literally nothing matters.
Literally nothing matters. And this was so funny. I think I like thought about this when Keon first asked me to do this, but I remember like when I was first diagnosed, I literally was so dissociated from life that I just remember I kept saying like literally nothing matters. Like literally nothing on the planet matters. And everyone was like, Krista, what? And I'm like, they'd be like, what color shirt like are you gonna wear? And I'm like, literally nothing matters. Like literally I was so dissociated, but it was like so true.
That's
Like
it.
Yep.
the small things are like just so they just don't matter in the grand scheme of life. They literally just don't matter. So like do the things you want to do, have fun doing them, believe in yourself.
Yep.
That's it. That's the tea.
Love it.
Preach. Preach,
Thank
preach,
you,
preach.
girlfriend. This was fabulous.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I had so much fun chatting with you. We're all gonna have to go hang out, maybe do something cool
Hell
together.
yeah.
I'm not gonna do a triathlon,
Yeah.
but we can pick something else that is fun.
I think I'm retired. I think you're good.
Great.
You're not.
Happy
Yes.
days.
Yes. We can get a drink.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right. Well,